The morning after their wedding, I was cleaning the hallway outside the guest room when I heard her voice. At first, I thought she was talking to Derek, but his car was gone. He had left early for a site inspection. That's when I realized she was on the phone. I didn't mean to listen, but the heat vent in the hall carries sound straight down into the closet where I keep my cleaning rags. And when I bent down to grab a fresh one, I heard every word. "I didn't marry him for love," she said. Her voice was low but clear. "I married him for what his mom owns. The woman sitting on $7 million and barely knows what she has." I froze. My hand was still in the basket, fingers touching the edge of a folded dish towel, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Even $7 million? She laughed then, that soft, smug kind of laugh that told me she was proud of herself. I leaned against the closet door, heart pounding in my ears. The woman she was talking about was me, and she had no idea I was 2 steps away, hearing it all. Let me tell you something about me. My name is Veronica Tyler. I'm 72 years old, and I've lived in this house in Asheville, North Carolina, for nearly 40 years. My husband, Lester, passed 8 years ago. He worked for the city as a zoning manager. He never made big money, but we lived below our means. I ran a small textile business out of our converted garage, quilts, curtains, rugs. I still do. Nothing flashy, just steady work. Over time, the little things added up. A few rental properties Lester bought in the 90s. Land we never sold when the offers came. A coin collection passed down from my father. Some smart savings. The house alone is worth over $1 million now. And I guess if you sat down and added it all up like Lily did, you'd get close to 7. But we never talked about it like that. It wasn't just money. It was our life, our work, our choices. And now, the girl who had stood in front of a judge just yesterday wearing a white dress from Macy's, smiling at my son, kissing him on the courthouse steps, she was already planning her next move. Still leaning on the closet door, I held my breath, hoping I misheard, hoping it was a bad joke. But she kept going. She still drives the same old Buick from the early 2000s. Lily said, "I mean, who does that? She's got no clue what she's worth. Just a few more months, and I'll figure out how to shift things around." She was so calm, so sure. It wasn't like she was panicking or scheming under pressure. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. I backed away from the closet and went into the kitchen. The tea kettle was still warm. I poured myself a cup and sat at the table without tasting a drop. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight. I looked out the window above the sink, where the dogwood tree cast shadows on the porch steps. That tree had been there when we bought the house. I planted flowers at its base every spring. Derek used to play in its branches. I remember him falling once and scraping both knees. I'd held him as he cried, whispering that he was safe. Now he was married to someone who didn't love him, someone who wanted what I had built. The strange thing is, I didn't feel angry yet, just hollow, like someone had cut the air out of the room. I thought about the way Lily had hugged me after the ceremony, all smiles and sweetness. How she told me she was grateful. How she'd asked to move into the guest house, just for a while, until they found something better. She brought over banana bread. She helped fold laundry. She laughed at my stories. I believed her. I even gave her my mother's blue ceramic casserole dish as a wedding gift. It had been in our family since before I was born. How many times had she smiled at me, knowing full well what she was planning? I set my cup down and walked slowly to the den. Sat on the old corduroy recliner Lester used to fall asleep in during baseball games. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there. My son had married someone who saw me as a number, a transaction, and I had welcomed her into my home, my life. I stayed there for a while, listening to the quiet. Lily didn't know what I'd heard. She hadn't seen me in the hall. She went on with her day like nothing had happened. And I stayed quiet too. I didn't tell Derek. Not yet. I wasn't ready to ruin his happiness based on one overheard phone call. But I knew something had shifted. Deeply. Permanently. You reach a point in life where you know when something is broken for good. You don't have to shake it or test it. You just feel it. And in that moment, I knew the trust I'd given her, the warmth I'd shown her, it was gone. Like someone had quietly picked it up and walked away with it. If you're a mother and that line made your stomach turn, you understand what real betrayal feels like. Her Kindle was built for women like you, who've lived, lost, and learned. Subscribe right now so you never feel alone in your story again. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I'd heard, wondering how long she'd been planning it, how far she would go, and more importantly, what I was going to do about it. After that morning, the house felt different, not in a loud, obvious way. No shouting, no slammed doors, just quieter, the kind of quiet that settles in your chest and stays there. I went through the motions that day, fed the birds, answered a few emails from my quilting clients, boiled some eggs for lunch, but I kept thinking about what she said, how easily those words left her mouth. Like it wasn't a big deal. Like my life, my work, everything I'd built was just part of her plan. That kind of silence doesn't come from peace. It comes from holding something heavy inside. I thought about Lester. If he were still here, he would have caught on faster than I did. He always had a read on people. Not that he was unkind. He just noticed things. When a neighbor's handshake was too firm or a smile didn't reach their eyes, he'd say, "Something's off there, V." I didn't always see it at first, but he was usually right. Lester didn't grow up with much. His parents were farmers in Rutherford County, and he was the first in his family to graduate high school. Everything we had, we earned slowly, a little at a time. He bought our first rental property when Derek was 10, a 2-bedroom duplex near downtown. Needed work, but Lester fixed it up himself on weekends. We never took vacations, never bought fancy things. But when we retired the mortgage early, I remember him pouring 2 glasses of iced tea and sitting on the back steps with me. He said, "No matter what happens, this house is ours. No bank, no lien. Ours." I carry that with me. And Derek came later in our marriage. I had him when I was 39. The doctor said I was lucky. I knew that. We tried for years. So when he came along, I held on tight. He was always a gentle boy, not quick to speak, but kind to everyone. Loved puzzles and building things with his hands. I still have his first wooden birdhouse out back. It leans a little now, but I can't bring myself to take it down. He struggled a bit finding his footing after college, drifted from one job to the next. I think he doubted himself more than he should have. But once he got hired at the city engineering office, he found his stride, started waking up with purpose. He liked the routine, the clear steps, said it made sense. When he brought Lily around, he was the happiest I'd seen him in years. She was warm, at least in the beginning. She baked scones once, said she found the recipe on a blog. They were dry, but I didn't say anything. She'd compliment my garden, ask questions about quilting. She seemed eager to be part of our life. I opened the door without hesitation. When they told me they were getting married, I offered the backyard for the reception. Derek said they wanted something small, just courthouse vows, and a simple dinner. I helped plan it anyway. I printed invitations, booked a little jazz trio, even made Lily a shawl from hand-dyed cotton, pale green, matched her eyes. A week before the wedding, I gave her my mother's brooch, silver with a little amber stone in the center. I told her, It's not worth much, but it's been passed down 3 generations. She smiled like it meant something. I believed it did. After the wedding, I offered them the guest house out back. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen. I used to rent it out on Airbnb, but I cleared the calendar and told them to stay as long as they needed. Lily thanked me, arms around my shoulders. I told her, "Your family now," and I meant it. But now, sitting at the kitchen table, I replayed that morning's words in my mind, over and over. She doesn't even know what she has. Just a few more months, and I'll figure it out. I'd spent decades protecting what Lester and I built. Not just money, but memories, stability, safety for Derek. And now it felt like I had handed the keys to someone who was already making plans to lock me out. I looked around the house. The same couch we bought in 1991. The bookshelf Lester built after he retired. The framed cross-stitch sampler I made in my 20s. Everything in that house had a story. It wasn't just furniture. It was our life woven together with time. I wondered how long she'd been watching it all, calculating. That silence. The one that settled over everything after her phone call. It didn't come from fear. It came from understanding. From realizing I had misjudged someone in the worst way. It made me question everything I'd given her. My trust, my home, my history. Was I blind or just hopeful? I kept asking myself that. Did I ignore signs? Did I rush to welcome her because I was so happy Derek had finally found someone? I didn't have the answers, but I knew I couldn't afford to stay stuck in the questions. That night, I made tea, sat in the living room with the lamp on low. The old grandfather clock ticked in the corner like it always had. I could hear laughter from the guest house window. Derek and Lily talking, watching something on TV. It should have made me smile. Instead, I felt like I was listening to strangers. And that was the hardest part of all. I didn't say anything right away. Not to Lily, not to Derek, not even to Harriet, my oldest friend. Something inside told me to hold my tongue. When people think you're not paying attention, they get sloppy. They show you who they are. So I watched. It started with little things. Lily replaced the framed photo of Lester and me that sat on the hallway shelf. Said she was freshening up the space. I found it wrapped in a towel at the bottom of the laundry basket 2 days later. Then it was the blue quilt I made when Derek was in high school. Disappeared from the foot of the guest house bed. When I asked about it, she shrugged and said it looked a bit worn. She stopped asking. She just did. Next came the drawers. The key to the old desk in the den went missing. I keep important papers there, receipts, house repairs, tax files. I hadn't opened it in weeks, but when I went looking for the key, it was gone. The lock had been changed. I asked Derek if he'd moved anything. He said no. Lily offered to help me search for it, but her eyes didn't match her tone. I didn't press. A few days later, Lily planned a dinner for Derek's work team. Said she wanted to make an impression. She asked if I'd be willing to help. I offered to make my squash casserole, something Derek always liked. She smiled, tight-lipped. "Oh, no need to cook," she said. "If you could just help with cleanup, that'd be great. You know, behind the scenes." Behind the scenes. That was her way of telling me to stay out of the way without saying it outright. I nodded and kept my voice even. "Of course. Just let me know what you need." The night of the dinner, I wore my green sweater and a nice pair of flats. I'd polished the silver serving tray and laid out the cloth napkins from the china cabinet. I thought it might feel good to be part of it all. Instead, I found myself hovering in the kitchen while Lily floated around the dining room like a politician. She greeted Derek's coworkers with charm and practiced ease. She poured drinks, touched shoulders, laughed at jokes that didn't land. She was wearing a cream blouse and gold earrings I hadn't seen before. Her hair was pinned back tight, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. Not once did she call me Mom. When she introduced me, it was, "This is Veronica, Derek's mother." That word, Veronica, landed differently. It was deliberate, distance in a single syllable. Have you ever been slowly erased by someone you welcomed with open arms? Before you scroll, hit the like button and subscribe to her Kindle if you've ever been made to feel like a stranger in your own home. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Derek didn't notice. He was too busy passing plates and bragging about a bridge his team had just finished. He looked proud, like he was finally settled. It broke my heart a little to see him so content, unaware of what was unfolding right under his roof. I washed dishes while they laughed in the other room. Later that night, after they'd all gone and Lily had gone out for a walk, I pulled down a small plastic bin from the hall closet. Inside was the old baby monitor I used when Derek was recovering from pneumonia at age 13. It was basic battery operated, but it still worked the last time I tested it. I wiped the dust from the receiver, popped in new batteries, and tucked it behind the bookshelf in the living room. Lily liked to take calls there, curled up with her tablet and a throw blanket. I'd heard her before, sometimes whispering, sometimes giggling. I never paid it any mind, but now I was listening. I placed the other half of the monitor behind the framed landscape painting in the hallway. From there, I could hear everything if I kept the bedroom door cracked. The old wood in this house carries sound better than any technology ever could. The next morning, I walked through the guest house while Lily was out. I pretended I was bringing in folded towels. A few things stood out. The bookshelf had been rearranged. My old cookbooks, gone. A new set of white dishes sat on the counter, not the blue ceramic ones I'd stocked there years ago. She had hung a calendar on the fridge, color-coded dates, notes scribbled in fine black pen. I didn't read it. I just noticed my name wasn't on it. Later that week, I saw her carrying a box to her car. Inside was a set of photo albums, ones that had been in the den cabinet. She said she was digitizing them for Derek. They never came back. That's when I knew this wasn't just a matter of someone settling in. She was slowly wiping me out of my own space, bit by bit, like pulling threads from a sweater. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I went to the office and began organizing my paperwork. I made copies of property deeds, insurance documents, and the living trust Lester, and I had set up back in 2006. I labeled folders and wrote notes in the margins. I scanned files and backed them up on a flash drive, which I hid inside a jar of buttons in my sewing basket. Every night, I sat with the baby monitor beside my bed. And every night, I waited, because she thought I wasn't looking. She thought she had the upper hand. But what she didn't know was that I had been underestimated before, and I'd learned exactly what to do when someone tries to erase you quietly. You take notes. You pay attention. You wait. And when the time comes, you don't shout. You show the truth. Plain and simple. And that's exactly what I intended to do. It was a Thursday afternoon when I first heard his name. I was folding towels in my room, the baby monitor tucked beside my sewing basket, when Lily's voice came through, clearer than usual. She must have been sitting closer to the bookshelf, where I'd hidden the receiver. Her tone was softer than when she spoke to Derek. There was a different rhythm to her words. Intimate. Familiar. Then I heard her say it. Nico. She said his name like they'd known each other a long time. Like it was a secret. She laughed, low and easy, and said, "She's holding on to it all like she's got a plan. But don't worry. She'll be too confused to stop us. She's already halfway there." My hands stopped mid-fold. I stood there, towel in hand, heart thudding in my chest. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just listened. She kept talking, calm as ever. I've been keeping notes. She said, little things she forgets, things she repeats. I'm building a case. A few more weeks, and we can say it's no longer safe for her to live alone. Derek will believe it. He trusts me. She paused. I imagined her sipping tea, legs tucked under her on the couch, like she didn't have a care in the world. He already signed the joint bank paperwork without reading it. I'll get the rest soon. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. My whole body felt heavy, not just from what she was planning, but from the way she talked about me, like I was just some old obstacle she had to work around. There's a kind of cold you feel when you realize someone sees you as weak. Not sick, not tired, but weak enough to push aside. That night, I couldn't sleep. I played the conversation back in my head, word for word. Nico, bank forms, safety concerns. I'd never seen Derek sign anything financial with her, but if what she said was true, she was already moving pieces behind the curtain. The next morning, while Lily was out doing errands, I walked over to the guest house. I'd made a copy of the key months ago when I first sensed something wasn't right. I didn't feel guilty about using it. Inside, everything was tidy, like a hotel room someone had tried to make personal. A few houseplants on the windowsill, scented candles, a framed picture of her and Derek at the courthouse, but no photos of me, no family things. I moved quietly, not touching more than I had to. I opened the drawer of the desk she'd brought with her. There were color-coded folders, neatly labeled. One caught my eye, transition plan. Inside were printouts of legal guides about adult guardianship, notes on memory assessments, a checklist titled Signs of Mental Decline. I read the items. Some I recognized. Others were clearly written to fit anyone over 70. Misplacing keys, forgetting appointments, difficulty concentrating. Lily had highlighted sections in yellow. At the back of the folder was something that made my stomach drop. It was a filled-out draft of a durable power of attorney form. My name was typed in the principal line, Lily's name under agent. I sat down in her chair and stared at it. It wasn't official. It wasn't signed or notarized, but it was ready. All she needed was my signature, or a way to make it look like I'd given it. And if that didn't work, she was clearly preparing for the courts to say I wasn't able to make decisions at all. I put everything back exactly as I found it, locked the door behind me. Back in my house, I opened my file drawer and added a note. Date, time, what I found. I recorded it all in a journal I kept hidden behind the pantry flour tin. I also added a new label to one of my flash drives. Nico phone call 1. That night, I left the light off in my bedroom and listened again through the monitor. She was on the phone with him again. No, I haven't told him yet, she said. It has to feel like his idea. Once the doctor confirms she's slipping, he'll want what's best for her. That's when we push the home care route. Once she's out of the house, everything else will fall into place. There was a pause. Then she said something I'll never forget. She's too proud to fight. She'll go quiet. I closed my eyes. She didn't know me at all. The next day, I made an appointment at the county clerk's office. I didn't tell Derek. I just got in my car and drove. I met with a woman named Rachel who explained how guardianship claims are reviewed. She told me how often families abuse the system, said it's more common than people think. I nodded. When I left, I stopped by the local UPS store and printed copies of my current will, my property deeds, and my living trust. I added everything to a fireproof box under my bed, made another flash drive copy of the call. From that moment on, I treated every word Lily said like evidence, because that's what it had become. This wasn't just about the money. It wasn't even about the house. It was about her thinking she could take my life while I was still living it. And now, there was someone else helping her do it. A man named Nico. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know how they met or how long they'd been talking. But I knew one thing for sure. She didn't love my son. And she didn't marry him for marriage. She married him to get to me. And I wasn't going anywhere. I made the coffee too strong on purpose. It was a small thing. I let it boil longer than it should have, left the pot on the burner just until it hissed a little. I poured myself a cup, sat down at the kitchen table, and took one sip before scrunching my face. Lily came in right on cue. "Everything okay?" she asked. I held up the mug. I think I forgot to turn it off in time. Or maybe I put too much in the filter. I don't know. She smiled politely, like someone watching an old dog bump into furniture. That was the beginning. The next day, I asked Derek if he'd seen my glasses. I said I'd lost them somewhere between the garage and the porch. Truth was, I'd put them on top of the refrigerator and left them there on purpose. When he found them, I acted surprised. Don't know what I was thinking," I said, laughing a little. He didn't think much of it, just gave me a side hug and said, "We all forget stuff sometimes." But I noticed the shift in Lily's eyes. She was paying close attention now. By the end of the week, I forgot where I parked at the grocery store. I stood in the parking lot with my keys in hand, spinning in slow circles like I couldn't remember what aisle I came from. A store clerk came to help me, and I thanked him, smiling sweetly. That evening, I saw Lily writing in a small leather-bound notebook at the dining table. I walked past her slowly. She flipped it closed when she heard my steps. So I did it again. Different things each time. Burned the toast. Called the dog by the wrong name. Asked if the mail had come, twice in an hour. It was all measured. Nothing that would scare Derek, just enough to confirm what Lily wanted to believe. Let her build her little case. I was building one of my own. Every time she wrote something down, I made a note in my own log. I dated it, described what she saw, and marked down exactly what I'd done to plant the seed. I also kept recording. I moved the baby monitor receiver closer to my nightstand and bought a second-hand audio recorder from a pawn shop down on Merrimont Avenue. I placed it inside a fake tissue box in the guest bathroom, where Lily liked to take long phone calls. It caught more than I expected. She forgot where the stove knob was yesterday. I heard her say to someone, "I'm guessing Nico." She started the burner and left the tea kettle on there for 20 minutes. Didn't even realize it. She was wrong about the time. I'd only left it 10. She called Derek by the wrong name, too. Just once, but I wrote it down. That part wasn't even true, but it didn't matter. She was starting to mix her lies in with my setup. That's the problem with manipulators. They get so confident, they stop keeping their story straight. Derek started asking gentle questions. "You doing okay with all the changes, Mom?" "Of course," I said. "Just getting older. Happens to the best of us." He nodded, but he looked unsure. That's when I reached out to Mr. Shields. He and my husband served on the same community board 20 years ago. He's retired now, but he still lives in town. Sharp as ever. I called him from the library, not from home, and told him I needed to ask about a legal matter, but I didn't want to get my son involved just yet. We met the next morning at a diner near the courthouse. I brought a folder with some of the notes I'd made, a copy of the guardianship checklist I'd found in Lily's desk, and a flash drive with 3 recordings. I didn't give him everything. Not yet. Just enough. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he folded his hands and leaned forward. "Are you safe?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "For now." He nodded slowly. "Good. Then we do this the smart way. No drama. No accusations. We keep gathering. I'll set up a file at the courthouse confidential. When you're ready, I'll help you lock it all down. Before I left, he handed me a blank affidavit form. Start putting your statement together. He said, dates, details, anything she said to you or around you. The more precise, the better. Back at home, I made another pot of coffee, this time just right. I sat at the kitchen table with the affidavit and started writing, date by date, incident by incident. It was strange how fast everything came back to me. I'd spent weeks pretending to be foggy, but my mind was as clear as it had ever been. That night, Derek mentioned they might go away for a weekend soon. Some retreat Lily had found online. She called it a break from the stress at home. I smiled. I think that's a great idea, I said. You two deserve a little time. She blinked, probably confused by how agreeable I was. But I already knew what she was trying to do. Get me alone, have someone check in while they were gone, maybe plant a few more stories. Or worse, let her think I was cooperating. Let her think I was slipping. I wasn't losing my mind. I was using it, and she was walking straight into a trap she didn't even know I'd set. It was a Tuesday when she tried to get him to sign the papers. I was in the den, pretending to dust the windowsills. The house was quiet, and I could hear their voices carry from the dining table. Lily was doing her usual sweet talk. Calm, soft tone, like she was offering him a second helping of pie. It's just a precaution, Derek. You never know. What if something happens to your mom while we're away? The hospital might need access to her medical info or her power of attorney. This just lets us handle things quickly. It's routine. I kept my back to the window, cloth in hand, moving slow. Derek didn't say much. He asked a few questions, mostly about what the forms meant. She brushed him off gently, told him they were standard legal documents, and nothing to worry about. I stood there, holding my breath. Then Derek said something I hadn't expected. I think I'll read through them first. Lily paused. You could feel it, even without seeing her. He added, just want to be sure I understand everything before I sign. She laughed, light and nervous. Of course. Take your time. But something had shifted in him. I could tell by the way he cleared his throat before standing up. The way his chair scraped the floor, not too quick, not too relaxed. Later that night, he knocked on my bedroom door. Hey, Mom, you got a minute? I sat up from the edge of the bed. Of course. He came in holding a folder. These were in the side drawer of the guest house desk. He said, Lily asked me to sign them earlier. He handed me the stack. I didn't pretend to act surprised. I looked through them slowly. Durable power of attorney, temporary guardianship authorization, bank account access form. They weren't filled in all the way, but the spaces were there. For signatures, for initials, for control. Derek ran a hand through his hair and sat down on the chair across from me. She said it was just in case. He mumbled. But I don't know, something didn't sit right. I closed the folder and looked at him. Why now? I asked. What do you think changed? He shrugged. She's been saying you forget things a lot. That maybe you're getting overwhelmed. I didn't want to believe it. But I've seen you do a few odd things lately too. I started to wonder. I nodded slowly. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I reached down and pulled out the box from under the bed. Inside were my labeled folders, my recordings, my notes. I handed him the top one labeled conversations. He opened it and started reading. His eyes moved across the page slower and slower. When he got to the part about Nico, his face changed. She said all this? He asked. Yes. He flipped to the next page. A printout of a transcript I had typed. He didn't speak for a while, just kept reading. Then he looked up at me. She said you wouldn't even notice if you were moved into care. I held his gaze. That's what she said. If you felt that moment in your chest, you know what it's like to carry your child's blind trust until it finally breaks. Her Kindle tells the stories no one else does. If you've ever wanted to be seen, this is your home. Subscribe now. And if you don't, at least tell us in the comments why not. We're listening. He blinked, stared at the floor, then back at me. How long have you known? Since the morning after your wedding. He leaned back in the chair, shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I didn't want to ruin your joy, I said, but I couldn't pretend either. So I started keeping track. Quietly. He swallowed hard. I feel stupid. You're not, I said quickly. You were in love. You believed her. That's not weakness. That's trust. He looked away, biting his lip. Then, finally, he said, I should have noticed sooner. I reached across the space between us and took his hand. You noticed now. That's what matters. He gave a small nod. I could tell he was still processing it, his mind going back over every moment, every excuse she gave, every little time he brushed something off. What do we do? He asked. We don't rush, I said. We stay calm. We protect what matters. And when the time is right, we show her we're not the fools she thought we were. He sat with me a little while longer. No more questions, no more talking. Just the two of us sitting in the soft light of my room, hands folded over a file full of truth. In that moment, something between us mended. He didn't see me as fragile anymore, and I didn't see him as lost. We were back on the same side, and that, more than anything, gave me strength. Derek asked me that morning if I could make peach cobbler for dinner. Just like when I was a kid, he said, smiling. Of course, I told him. I'll pick up fresh peaches. He didn't say much else, just that he and Lily would be home by 7 and that we'd eat together. It felt like any other dinner, but it wasn't. I dusted off the good dishes, pulled out the cloth napkins I'd sewn with my sister years ago, lit 2 candles, set the table for 3. I even placed the old ceramic pitcher in the middle, filled with cut flowers from the garden. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was ready. When they came in, Lily smiled like she always did, bright and practiced. Derek looked quiet, focused. He helped me set the last plate. Lily complimented the cobbler. Smells amazing, she said, pulling out her chair. We all sat, passed the chicken and green beans around. For the first few minutes, the conversation was light. Lily asked about my garden. I answered with a smile, knowing what was coming. Then Derek wiped his mouth with his napkin and set his fork down. There's something I want to go over tonight, he said. It's important. Lily looked over, still smiling. Sure. What's up? He reached beside his chair and pulled up a manila folder. It was thick, labeled. He placed it on the table between them and opened it. This, he said, is everything I've learned over the last few weeks. Notes, dates, copies of documents, and recordings. Her smile faded. He continued, calm and steady. You said you were helping me protect Mom, but I've been looking through these forms. The ones you asked me to sign. I didn't understand them at first, but now I do. You weren't protecting her. You were planning to take over everything she owns. Lily leaned back in her chair. Derek, that's not what. He raised his hand. Don't. Just let me finish. He picked up a paper and read from it. It was her voice, transcribed from a recording. She's already halfway there. She won't fight it. Lily froze. Her eyes moved to me, then back to him. Where did you get that? She asked, her voice lower now. I found it in Mom's files. He said, I read everything. I listened to the recordings. All of them. She laughed a little, but there was no humor in it. You're misunderstanding. Those are taken out of context. I was worried about her. I placed my hand gently on the table. Lily, stop. She turned to me. I held her gaze. You planned to erase me. I said plainly. You wanted control of the house, the properties, and everything Lester and I worked for. And you did it behind smiles and sweet words. She shook her head. That's not true. I reached into the drawer by my chair and pulled out a small USB stick. I placed it on the table. That's a copy of the audio, I said, but it's not the only one. The county has it. The attorney has it. So does a judge. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I kept my voice calm. There's a legal freeze on everything now. You can't touch a single account. Can't file anything in my name. Can't pretend to care. Ladies, have you ever stayed quiet long enough just to prove you were right? Don't just sit with that strength. Stand in it. Like and subscribe to her Kindle if you've ever had to protect what others tried to steal with a smile. And if you're still watching without subscribing, let us know why. We're here for honest women, no matter what. She stood up quickly. You're doing this to me, she said to Derek, her voice sharper now. He didn't flinch. You need to leave, he said. Tonight. Her face twisted. This is my home, too. We're married. Derek stood slowly. Not anymore. I've already filed for annulment, based on fraud. Mr. Shields helped me prepare the paperwork. Her hands trembled. You can't do this. You don't know what you're giving up. I know exactly what I'm walking away from, he said, and I'm done. She looked at me one last time. You'll regret this, she said, her voice cold. No, I said, I'll sleep just fine. She stormed out of the dining room and into the guest house without another word. Derek sat back down, rubbed his face with both hands, and let out a deep breath. I reached across the table and touched his hand. Thank you, I said. He looked at me. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. You saw it when it mattered. We didn't eat dessert that night. The cobbler sat untouched in the middle of the table. But we sat together, in the quiet, not saying much. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful. The pretending was over. The truth had been spoken, and there was no going back. The day after she left, the house felt different. It wasn't just the silence. It was the way the air moved, like something heavy had been lifted. I opened the windows early that morning. Let the breeze come through. No more tiptoeing around. No more pretending not to notice the shift in the room when she walked in. The stillness now felt clean, settled. Derek stayed for a few days in the main house, said he didn't want to be alone in the guest house. I didn't mind. We moved easily around each other, cooked simple meals, shared quiet coffee, worked on little things that had been put off for months. He fixed the wobbly kitchen stool. I hemmed the curtains in the laundry room. We swept out the back shed, found a rusted toolbox that belonged to Lester. Derek oiled it and said he'd clean the tools up and use them himself. We didn't talk much about Lily at first, but on the third day, we pulled down the quilts I'd stored in the attic. Some of them had been boxed up since she moved in. I had forgotten how colorful they were, each one stitched with its own pattern, its own story. We hung one in the hallway, another in the den. It felt like putting my voice back on the walls. Later, we moved the photo albums back to the shelves in the living room. I noticed one was missing, probably gone with her, but the others were still there. Pictures of Derek in his Little League uniform, our first Christmas in this house, Lester asleep on the couch with the dog on his chest. Derek flipped through one of the books, stopping on a picture of his dad in the backyard, holding a rake and smiling. He shook his head slowly. He'd be proud of you, Mom. I gave a soft smile. He'd be proud of you, too. 2 days later, a letter came from a lawyer out of Charlotte, a cease and desist notice. Lily claimed we had made false accusations. She wanted us to retract everything or face legal consequences. I handed it to Mr. Shields the next morning. He chuckled once and said, "Bluff." Still, He filed a formal response, a counterclaim with full evidence, timestamps, affidavits, and court-ready documentation. He didn't add one extra word of emotion, just facts. 2 weeks later, her lawyer quietly dropped the case. Not a word from her since. I asked Derek once if he thought she'd ever reach out again. He shook his head. She got what she wanted from other people her whole life. You were the first person who didn't let her. We sat on the porch that night, him with a soda, me with chamomile tea. The air was warm. Fireflies blinked in the yard. He spoke quietly. I feel like I failed you, Mom. You didn't fail me, I said. I should have asked more, seen more. I ignored the signs. You trusted her, I replied. That's not something to be ashamed of. He looked out over the yard. Still, I hate that it got that far. I reached over and patted his hand. Now you see clearly. That's what matters. He nodded, eyes soft. It wasn't perfect between us. There were still moments when I'd catch a flicker of guilt in his face. But we were moving forward, slowly, with care. In the following weeks, he helped me repaint the laundry room. We added new shelves in the pantry. I cleaned out the closet in the guest room, finally tossing things that no longer served a purpose. We lived day by day. Sometimes the damage someone leaves behind isn't loud. It's not broken windows or slammed doors. It's subtle. A drawer that no longer holds your photos. A mug that never comes back. A name you no longer hear. But healing, too, can be quiet. A fresh quilt on the bed. A repaired step on the porch. A son showing up, this time with his eyes open. That's what the stillness became. A place to breathe again. A place to begin again. And this time, everything felt real. A few months later, I walked back into the community center with a bag of fabric scraps and a tin of oatmeal cookies. It had been a while. The weaving group had changed a little, some new faces, a few familiar ones. But the rhythm of it all came back fast. The soft hum of conversation, the quiet focus in the room, the sound of threads slipping through hands. I didn't say much at first, just worked quietly and listened. Eventually, someone asked if I'd like to help lead a new storytelling circle they were starting, a group where women could share life lessons, funny or hard or honest. I said yes. I told them stories from my past. Some they could laugh at, others they nodded along to. I didn't mention Lily by name, but I did talk about trust and about paying attention to how people make you feel when no one else is watching. Back at home, Derek started dating again. Nothing serious at first, but a few weeks ago, he brought someone by for coffee. Her name is Nina, works at the Parks Department. Kind eyes, firm handshake. She asked thoughtful questions and listened more than she talked. After she left, Derek looked at me and said, "She's not like before." I believed him. We don't talk about Lily much now. She was never charged with anything, never came back for more. Mr. Shields said she probably moved on to someone else, another plan, another story to slip into. Every now and then, someone from town mentions her name. Nothing mean, just passing curiosity. I usually just nod and change the subject. There's nothing left for me to say about her. What mattered was what came after. Derek, and I cleaned up what needed fixing. Not just around the house, but between us too. I updated my estate with Mr. Shields. Everything is now in a trust, clear, guarded, and fair. No loopholes, no questions. I added a note, to be read with respect. He smiled when he saw it. I also made a smaller list. Things I want to pass down while I'm still here. Not just money or property, but stories, recipes, small things that carry meaning. The quilt I made when Derek was born. Lester's pocket watch. A set of letters my mother wrote when I was in my 20s. Things that matter because they came from love, not from value. The porch has become my favorite spot again. I sit out there most evenings, weaving or sipping tea, watching the sun fall behind the trees. I still use the same wooden rocking chair Lester bought me for my 50th birthday. It creaks a bit more now, but it's steady. I've thought a lot about what we keep, what we carry forward. People try to take things from you sometimes. Not just objects, but space, voice, dignity. But you get to decide what stays yours. You get to decide who you are. And the truth is, if someone ever tries to make you question your worth, just remember, your story doesn't end because they tried to rewrite it. It ends when you say it does. If you've made it this far with me, thank you. Truly. I want to ask you something. Have you ever been made to feel like you were fading just so someone else could take your place? What did you do to take back your story? I'd love to hear it. Share it in the comments because healing is possible and your voice matters more than you think. And if this story touched something in you, please like it, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe. There's always more to tell, and we're stronger when we tell it together.